The story begins with a young man named Becket, who is sitting in a prison cell. In just a few hours, he is scheduled to be executed by hanging. Despite the gravity of his situation, he appears completely relaxed, showing no signs of tension or fear. A priest arrives to meet him and is stunned to see someone so calm in the face of death. Unable to contain his curiosity, the priest asks Becket how he can be so at ease. Becket smiles and replies, "Listen to my story. I have only 4 hours left, and I don't know what will happen to my soul after that. But in this time, I will tell you everything." The narrative shifts back to a time before Becket was even born. His mother, Mary, belonged to the incredibly wealthy Redfellow family, whose fortune was valued at approximately $9 million. However, Mary never cared for money. When she turned 18, she attended a party where she met an ordinary boy who was a member of a band. She fell in love and soon after discovered she was pregnant. Though she was worried, she gathered her courage and told her father the truth. Upon hearing the news, her father was enraged. He could not tolerate the idea of a common man's name being associated with his high society lineage. He gave Mary a cruel ultimatum: either terminate the pregnancy or leave the house forever. Without a moment's hesitation, Mary chose her child. She sacrificed her inheritance, her luxury, and her family. She married her boyfriend and moved to a modest, facility-deprived area of New Jersey. Despite the lack of servants and comforts, Mary was happy. However, tragedy struck on the day Becket was born. His father, overwhelmed with the joy of the birth, suffered a massive heart attack in the hospital and passed away immediately. Mary became a single mother, handling everything alone. She refused to crawl back to her family and instead took a low-paying government job. Despite their poverty, she was determined to give Becket the upbringing of an aristocrat. She enrolled him in the same elite school her relatives attended, taught him to play the piano, dressed him in fine clothes, and groomed him mentally and physically to fit into the world of the wealthy. She knew that one day he would return to the world she had left behind. In school, Becket developed feelings for a classmate named Julia. She was beautiful and wealthy, and at first, Becket appeared to fit her social circle. However, when Becket honestly admitted that he lived in a poor part of New Jersey, Julia lost all interest and distanced herself. Becket tried to convince her that one day he would be rich, revealing the secret his mother had told him that he was a Redfellow and entitled to their fortune. Julia initially stayed close out of curiosity, but eventually, she began to see his claims as delusions and left him, mocking his poverty. Life took a darker turn when Becket discovered his mother was dying of cancer. He hoped the Redfellow family would finally reach out upon hearing of her illness, but no one even called. Before passing away, Mary held Becket's hand and apologized for not giving him the life he deserved, making him promise that he would one day claim his rightful place. Her final wish was to be buried in the family graveyard, but the Redfellows refused even that, forcing Becket to bury his mother in a common cemetery. When he attempted to contact them one last time, he was handed a cold letter stating he had no claim to the family name. Left with nothing, Becket was sent to foster care, losing his school and his lifestyle. Years passed, and Becket grew into an ordinary salesman living a middle-class life. One day, Julia reappeared in his life. Although she was now married, Becket's feelings for her resurfaced. He tried to win her over, but she rejected him again, mockingly saying, "Call me when everyone in your family is dead." While it was a joke to her, it became a dark inspiration for Becket. He realized that if the Redfellow family were eliminated, the entire property would legally fall to him. He examined his family tree and identified 7 members standing between him and the fortune. His first target was Tyler, a wealthy broker. Becket infiltrated a high-end party hosted by Tyler. Noticing that Tyler was alone on his yacht far from the crowd, Becket seized the opportunity. He rode a water scooter to the yacht, tied the anchor rope around Tyler's leg, and dropped the heavy anchor into the sea. As the boat moved, the pressure of the anchor dragged Tyler into the depths. It appeared to be a freak accident, and Becket returned to the party undetected. He felt a strange surge of confidence. Murder was easier than he had imagined. Becket attended Tyler's funeral with cold nerves. There, he met Tyler's father, Warren. Becket revealed he was Mary's son. Warren, struck by guilt over how the family had treated Mary, apologized and offered Becket a job at the family's financial firm. Becket, though inexperienced, accepted and began learning the ways of the wealthy world. During this time, Julia contacted him again, teasing him with the idea of a date only to reject him again. Becket's mission continued. His next target was Nova, an artist and singer. Becket posed as a fan to gain Nova's trust. Through Nova, he met a girl named Ruth, who, like his mother, was unimpressed by wealth. Becket and Ruth formed a genuine connection. However, Becket stayed focused on his goal. He sabotaged Nova's workshop by mixing photographic chemicals that would ignite upon contact with light. When Nova flipped the switch to start working, a massive explosion killed him. Bucket again attended the funeral, where he was questioned by FBI agents. He calmly denied any deep connection to the family, claiming Nova was just a friend. Bucket's professional life flourished under his Uncle Warren, who eventually gave him his own office. However, Julia returned, this time asking for a loan to cover her husband's massive debts. When Bucket refused, remembering her past cruelty, Julia turned lethal. She revealed she knew about the suspicious deaths in his family and threatened to go to the police if he didn't comply. Bucket then targeted Stephen, a corrupt pastor involved in money laundering. Posing as a reporter, Bucket poisoned Stephen's supplements during an interview. Although Stephen briefly suspected him and held a sword to his throat, Bucket talked his way out by claiming to be a long-lost cousin. Stephen drank the poisoned beverage and died of a heart attack. The church, wanting to avoid a scandal, ruled it a natural death. As Bucket planned his next moves, he and Ruth decided to get married. However, his double life became increasingly difficult to manage. His fourth target was Cassandra, a woman who lived behind intense security but visited a spa weekly. Disguised as an employee, Bucket offered her a free teeth whitening treatment, which was actually a fatal poison. Her death was attributed to a faulty, cheap product. The fifth target was MacArthur, a man obsessed with space. Bucket poisoned MacArthur's coffee before a flight. The poison took effect while MacArthur was piloting his private jet, causing a crash that killed him. By now, Bucket was incredibly wealthy and confident. Only two people remained, his grandfather and his Uncle Warren. Because Warren had been like a father to him, Bucket decided to spare him. However, the FBI began closing in. They questioned Bucket about his whereabouts during Stephen's death. Though Bucket used an employee as a body double to create an alibi on CCTV, the agents remained suspicious. Soon after, Uncle Warren died of a natural heart attack. Bucket was genuinely saddened, but he was now the primary heir. On the day of his engagement to Ruth, Bucket received an invitation from his grandfather. Before leaving, Julia blackmailed him again with photos proving his involvement in the murders. She forced him to pay $300,000 to her husband. Afterward, Bucket finally met his grandfather. The old man was not fooled. He knew Bucket had killed the others. He confessed that Mary had been his favorite, but he couldn't forgive her betrayal. Feeling lonely and defeated, the grandfather handed Bucket a gun and told him to finish the job. Bucket couldn't do it, but the grandfather then tried to shoot Bucket. In the ensuing struggle, Bucket defended himself using a bow and arrow, accidentally killing the old man. Police arrived, but Bucket was cleared of this specific death because it was ruled self-defense. He finally inherited the entire Redfellow estate. He had the wealth and the status he promised his mother. However, Ruth was unhappy with the lavish lifestyle. Suddenly, the FBI arrested Bucket not for the murders he committed, but for the murder of Julia's husband. It turned out Julia had framed him, claiming he killed her husband to be with her. Ruth left him in disgust. Back in the present, Bucket finishes his story to the priest. He explains that Julia offered him a deal. She would produce a suicide note proving her husband's death wasn't a murder if Bucket signed over his entire fortune to her. Just as the guards arrive, Bucket learns he is being released. Julia kept her word and saved him from the gallows. Outside the prison, Ruth meets him only to return his locket and walk away forever. Bucket feels he has lost everything, but then Julia pulls up in a luxury car. He realizes that while he lost his true love, Ruth, he now has his wealth and his childhood obsession, Julia. As he drives away, he thinks of the priest, who knows the truth but will never speak, believing Bucket has already confessed his sins to God. The movie ends with Bucket living the lavish, dark life he fought so hard to obtain.